New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello and welcome back to Global Focus Today. I am your host, Reverend Sharri Johnson. And today we have, I hate redundancy, but I'm going to use one here. We have somebody who has the most unique, there's the redundancy, the most unique special focus ministry of all the ones we've encountered so far. Reverend John Odden is a director of the Spiritual Care Everywhere. It's a program of collaborative for Universal Health. It's a 501c3, and he co-founded it in 2011. He's an ordained minister of Centers for Spiritual Living, and he's been serving for decades as a spiritual living coach or a licensed practitioner. After graduating from college as a math major, I love math majors, he worked in major companies, quickly focusing on information technology and what was then called high-tech solutions. Nowadays, the stuff we did 30 years ago is as low-tech as it gets. And I'm not going to tell you anything more because I want him to tell you. So please help me welcome Reverend John Odden from Spiritual Care Everywhere. Thank you, Reverend John, for joining us today, for saying yes to being here. In spite of
I appreciate the invitation.
I'm going to just dive right in and ask you questions. I love the name of your ministry, Spiritual Care Everywhere, but what made you pick that? Why not just do what you need to do and serve as a chaplain?
Well, I was volunteering as basically a prayer ministry volunteer for decades in various spiritual communities and New Thought, and that really called to my heart. And eventually, a friend of mine said, come on down to the local regional medical center, which was a Catholic facility. He said they have a large volunteer program. And I went down and, went through their orientation and served and really loved it. And I also got to listen to these national webinars of Catholic healthcare. And one of the things I learned, I learned a couple things, was that a lot of hospitals would not ask, would you like spiritual care? Because they could never get enough chaplains. And indeed, I had a lot of people encouraging me when I said I wanted to upscale my service and provide more spiritual care somehow, saying I should be a chaplain. And I checked that out and found out that while chaplains are wonderful and there's great training programs and it's really passionate work that builds leaders and highly skilled counselors and really difficult medical ethics and major decisions where people will call for spiritual support and need the best because it's mom, it's dad, it's a child. And yet, as I listened, I first uncovered that no way could we produce enough chaplains. And then the next thing I learned is that if you did offer spiritual care, you could actually help a lot more people heal than if you didn't. And so it was just thinking about what to do that I got this kind of inspired notion that with so many prayer ministries, maybe I could come up with a way that any spiritual community, house of worship, minister, or prayer practitioner could be available to be connected, because when we go for our health care, we show up with our culture, our upbringing, our faith preferences, whether it's yay or nay for any spiritual care or a particular kind. And to imagine that, it's enough for a hospital to solve the major diseases and traumas that happen to people, but for them to offer all the spiritual care in every facility would be a daunting task. So it occurred to me, maybe in this world of the internet, there'd be a way to have all forms of spiritual care available everywhere.
So you built an online spiritual cafeteria. I love it.
That's where we're headed.
That's where we're headed. Okay, so what made you come to, this is one of my favorite questions. What made you come into New Thought? Did you start out in New Thought? Were you always a New Thought person, or did you have a transitional experience somewhere else? How did you get here? That's the question.
Well, yeah. So I grew up in the Midwest, and most of the time my family would attend some kind of some kind of a church that maybe got started in Europe and, came over to the New World and had a, strong American network. And in the particular church in a university town where I was a teenager, they said, well, we're going to have a class to see if people should join. And then they got to the part where the assistant youth minister asked if anyone had questions. Nobody gave me a playbook. I did not understand that this was not the class where you ask questions. So I always thought that to survive as a student, you had to ask the best possible questions, and then my chances of passing and surviving would be the best. So I asked my best question, and they took me aside and said, we advise that you just go sit in the adult church with your parents and listen to the music and the message from the pastor, which is fine with me. But it kind of left me like, wait a minute, they all joined and I'm out here. So I would say I was seeking, and then I wandered into a church or religious science community, and immediately something clicked, because the math and science that I loved was described as being the friend and the partner and the accomplice with spirituality and faith and tradition in generating, how we live the best as humans. And to me, that was like, aha. And then from there, it was pretty easy to lean into their form of prayer ministry, being a licensed practitioner.
Well, that's the easiest transition I've heard so far. Most of us have some kind of prior trauma, spiritual trauma, before we got to New Thought. So you slipped in sideways when it was in it's to the benefit of all of the people who are looking at your service. Now, we have chatted a few times about your newest, I think of it as your newest play toy, ChatGPT and OpenAI. And there's been an awful lot of foofara going on in the world around that right now. So give us your take, because you seem to be a proponent of using this kind of software.
Well, yeah, I would say that I believe that most software has a good use and a place it can serve well. And if you look at all the uses of any software, and I'll just mention like social media and some of the hoo-ha about that as an example. There's really good uses, and then there's other uses. And some of the other uses actually can hurt people. So to say that a technology can be a problem, like they put something that much different from our cell phone into an automobile and said it was self-driving, and then the next thing is the headline that except the car caught fire, or except the car decided that it wanted to park halfway up a tree, or stories like that. Or even, if you look at the tragedies with some of the advanced airliners, where the airliner is now flying itself until things get screwy in a hurry, and suddenly the technology that was here to help didn't, because people got sideways and it didn't all work out. So what I was looking at first, I was imagining spiritual care everywhere, and I was one who had teams of people in high tech around the world, and we would have stand-up meetings with the people in the 1, 2, and 3 shift, all on one meeting once a week. And the people were in different labs in different regions to get the work done 7x24, continuous effort. So to me, talking to people on video, like, okay, no big deal. And yet for many people I know, both in healthcare, where eventually it took a national federal rule that like, it's okay now, we've got this pandemic thing, so telehealth is okay. Or similarly, in any spiritual community where I've served, in the beginning, people would say, well, this remote video thing, that'll never work. And in this case, the adoption cycle was much faster. Over a period of several years, most people in most spiritual communities are saying there is some place for that. And we have people that we love them, they love us, we're connecting with them, and they haven't been able to physically get here yet due to distance or whatever other factors that can come into play. So if you look at the speed of adopting technology, I think it's true that things are speeding up. And so now there's all this noise about OpenAI and ChatGPT. And so before, the thing we were doing with Spiritual Care Everywhere was preparing to launch. And if somebody does another OpenAI with ChatGPT announcement, I could get upset, because we get ready to launch and then something big enough lands in this era where we have this fast adoption, and you go like, well, this is so big, we have to pause and take a thought before we just press the button and then have to do a lot of retrofitting down the road. So this one comes out, and there's a lot of people expressing a lot of concern, but I got to tell you that we've done some experiments and looked at, can you use that engine to generate useful prayer in different styles? And our private experiments say the answer is absolutely yes. On the other hand, you can use that technology to generate the most outrageous nonsense. One of my favorites is there's one of the high-tech leaders, Dr. Stephen Wolfram, likes to talk about how he used the ChatGPT to get an excellent academic article with citations on blue wolves, not black wolves, gray wolves, white wolves, Arctic wolves, blue wolves. And he said, the genus name and the discovery story and the citations were all quite impressive. But when you fact check it, the amount of that had any reality was bupkis, 0. So that kind of shows that if you just turn the technology loose without thinking about it, it's very easy to drive in the ditch, get stuck, and maybe not even be able to get out before people come by and say, we got to shut this down. So what to do? We're sitting here having thought through, how do we make, just like there's telehealth, teleprayer possible as part of Spiritual Care Everywhere. Nowadays, that's pretty easy, as well as, if someone's in the hospital and, they don't necessarily want some strangers seeing them, but they would like spiritual care, the ability to talk on the phone, keep people's phone numbers private, and connect up a person with some spiritual care volunteer or professional that they would recognize from their culture and faith. But then even still, I commented before that the reason I'm not chaplain, Reverend John, was I looked at the big problem wasn't, could I be a chaplain? Could I be a good enough chaplain? But we don't seem to have a way to produce enough chaplains to be at all proportionate to what's happening in society and the number of people, even if they're not in the hospital, who might really appreciate some spiritual care because they had a bad day in the neighborhood or a bad day at the physical office or virtual office. If you can't produce enough, like what comes next? And even communities I've served in, sometimes it feel like we're burning out our prayer practitioners. How do we get more? And that's where it's not hard to kind of imagine, wait a minute, if we can get this OpenAI's Chat GPT to generate good prayer, good, useful spiritual care, if we could get it to do that and that way generate more, could we then use the ministers and volunteers as gatekeepers where they don't have to pray up every prayer that might be desired, but could they at least vet the prayers so that if a particular community says, we want in for spiritual care everywhere, we want to be known for the way we pray or the way we treat or whatever they call it, and we could give them the ability to amplify their voice without overtaxing them and asking them to do more than was possible, then there's a way that we can train and use the tools like the Chat GPT to help. And also, if the demand for low cost, no cost spiritual care is larger than the number of volunteers, this could be an honest pathway to generate enough prayer support customized to the condition, the culture, and the faith to actually have a chance to make a dent in the need.
Wow. I don't say that very often, but wow. That what I'm seeing is, you know what a Turing machine is. I'll explain for the people who don't.
Can I say more before we do Turing machines?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
So before we do, a lot of the headlines quite reasonably say, maybe we need to ban, restrict, or regulate these artificial intelligences. And if you look at like things that went bad, like it's not hard to think of bad headlines where behind it people use some high tech, whether it was social media or whatever, and they got themselves in a situation that nobody would want to be in or want their neighbor to be in, right? Part of the thing that really strikes my heart is that if we can learn how to use ministers and prayer practitioners and prayer volunteers as guides or curators for stuff we generate with ChatGPT, perhaps us in spiritual care can figure out how to curate, guide, and do guardrails for some of these most advanced technologies that then people could take back to other scenarios. I mean, spiritual care is the art about helping people when they're at their most fragile, feeling their most broken, hoping that they can find a pathway to their miracle. If we can use the heart of humans to create guardrails and pathways to wring benefit out of the technology, I would bet we're going to get lessons that can help people all over the place. And clearly we need to learn how to curate and manage our technology for good. It's a big issue for humans these days.
Absolutely.
Well, let's bring in the Turing machine, please. I love those things.
I'm not going to do a big long dissertation about Turing machines. What I'm just going to explain is that a Turing machine is basically a program. It's not a piece of hardware, it's a program. And what it does is it explores every possibility. So what I see in my mind is this tree of prayers, but periodically in the tree are people who are ministers, who are curators. I love that word, curators of the prayers, making sure that the tree doesn't get off the tracks and the people are really getting quality help that they need. It doesn't matter who wrote the words. It only matters that the words got to the person who needed them. And I am just so thrilled that you have found this opportunity and the ethical framework that comes from your healthcare background, the ethical framework to make it something that I think could actually succeed and evolve into the next level of chaplaincy.
Just could be. I believe, that people everyone has within us, it's a new thought kind of a thing, our own personal interface with spirit, with the divine. And if we can engage that and help people see more ways that they can leverage the value with that, we will both help people who receive the benefit of more spiritual care, find and draw strength from their own faith, as well as I believe will help people that are in the practice or the service of praying to gain a deeper appreciation into the personal value that they bring. Now, people asked me when I was in my third decade of serving as a licensed prayer practitioner, like, how can you possibly keep doing this? And I explained that every couple of years somebody comes back and says, I know you didn't do it, but I really feel like the prayer you shared with me put me in a place where the miracle was possible, and I want to just thank you because I got it. There was even one fellow I prayed with, and the family was very concerned. He had been on a ventilator in the ICU many years ago, and the family was wondering, are we going to have to disconnect him? And I prayed with him. It was in another city, and I stopped by and I knew him. I prayed with him personally and came on home. And then the call came from the hospital a few weeks later, and everyone's all grim and concerned. And and they said, well, he's awake, he's eating, and he seems to remember everything anybody said while they were visiting him in the ICU. And then somebody contacted me and said, well, you didn't have to pray him back remembering everything we said while we were visiting, did you? Some of that was confidential. But we're all here, I believe, as spiritual beings with that gift to help others in our own way, if we can find the moment and lean in and serve. And sometimes that can be scary, require a stretch, but boy, if we lean in and share and do, we can all lift up our corner of the world. And as a lot of people do that, then the world does become the place we've been dreaming of. And I do believe that just sort of ripples into the possibility to look at how can we adapt technology to help us amplify. Instead of amplifying our voice, which a lot of the social media is just about blasting, a headline, how can we perhaps use it to amplify our heart? And to me, you talk about one heart, Sharri, the possibility to help people find a new way to amplify their heart, know it, see it, and own it, to me would be the best thing I could have hoped to do.
I agree 100%. And I suspect that there are folks listening to our program who agree 100%. So I'm going to ask you, is it okay to put up your website so that they can come and reach you there? And if somebody wanted to, support your ministry in some way, how would they go about that?
Well, on that's basically just a here we are that says if you want to be poised to receive the news and developments, to register for that. And it's all done out of the nonprofit Collaborative for Universal Health, which is fully capable as a IRS approved 501c3 to accept donations. We're not on a specific campaign soliciting donations. One of the goals with Spiritual Care Everywhere is not to get into being over monetized. What's that? People have said the portion of our national expenditure that goes to healthcare is like really large. It's getting larger, and it's hard to. The professors of economics are saying it's hard to imagine advanced civilization right side up when healthcare is so expensive. And even though we work hard in America, to do a good job, people who study relative healthcare costs will say the way we do so much of it is so expensive. So in Collaborative Universal Health, part of our mantra was to find the less costly ways to do things. I did do a lot of my growing up in a university town, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And there was a professor there. He was after my time, but I was introduced to him by someone who passed through Ann Arbor after me, C.K. Prahalad. And C.K. was a very famous professor there and consulted to the largest corporations of the world. And one of his last writings, which generated a big stir, and he was very heartfelt and sincere, was that the things that make the biggest difference in terms of business and human destiny will be businesses that can equitably serve the billions at the bottom. That in this pyramid of success and well-being, that we've got the billions at the bottom. And a lot of the things like, some of our healthcare stuff has a hard time reaching the billions at the bottom. So we figured with spiritual care everywhere and the other C4UH activities, we would focus on those things that could be done extremely low cost, so that there'd be the way to be inclusive of everyone without getting into all these price and cost and insurance and barriers. And if we could learn to do more things that way, maybe it would inspire others to do likewise.
Well, that's absolutely marvelous, but that's not what I meant. I meant if somebody wanted to participate to support your ministry as a volunteer or as a prayer person or as a tech person, that kind of support, would they still just contact you through your website or get on your mailing?
Well, on the website, someone can say that they're a fan of spiritual care. They can say, I'm in healthcare and I want to offer spiritual care. They can say, I do spiritual care. I want to participate. Someone can even say, I'm a faith or a house of worship, and we want to be participating. So it's got a bunch of different check boxes or selectors for people to say the scope of their interest, and we can engage everyone appropriately.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so thrilled because I know that there are people who are destined to be part of spiritual care everywhere, and they just don't know it yet. But this will help them find out. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So I'm going to ask you some questions that I ask everybody who comes on my show because they protect me from myself. The first one is there anything that you want to talk about spiritual care everywhere or anything else for that matter that I haven't asked you about?
I would just say that part of the impetus for me to start spiritual care everywhere was stuff I saw when I was doing some of my volunteering with big faith-sponsored systems, where there were people discovering the difference that spiritual care can make. And I would encourage everyone to, in any setting, if you have access to prayer, or you've got some favorite prayers from your family, your folks, or you've ever been in a house of worship and there's a favorite prayer, check it out, pay attention, because I believe that there's a way that the dynamic that prayer triggers in human is an activator that is not yet fully appreciated and understood. I did see some very interesting research results. One of them was, if we know people's preference, yay, nay, about do they want spiritual care or not, we can nearly eliminate residual mortality for selected high-risk diseases. And that's like technical kind of public health speak for, if we just ask people, would you like spiritual care, and they say yes or no, we can care for them slightly better and have less people dead sooner. Whoa! And so there's people who've been doing research and, kind of sniffing around the edges, basically revealing there's more to understand, and we need to find a way to massively get more experience to really learn what that dynamic might be. So I believe there's much good to do, much to learn, and we hope that just by making spiritual care more available, others will come in and do the various studies and researches to figure out what are the best uses in the places where the impact is needed to be able to prioritize and focus for the best.
Okay. So the next one is, how does spiritual care everywhere promote, enhance, encourage, pick your own verb, world peace?
Yeah. Well, clearly we're in a world where there's a lot of non-peace stuff happening. It's not too hard to notice people talking or see a headline streaming by. Not so many newsstands anymore. I used to walk by a newsstand and you could do a headline survey, and there was a lot of not peace. And I do believe that to the extent people realize that part of their self-care can include spiritual care, that it's something that's out there with a lot of legs and history on it. In most cultures, languages, and faith backgrounds, that if people become aware and a little bit more attuned to the ability to take the benefit of that, that will start to create an environment where people start to imagine, oh, wait a minute, if I can take myself to peace, I can help others take that step. To me, peace will flow out of people, and that will be just as important as eradicating the non-peace nonsense that I'm tired of hearing about.
Oh, aren't we all? And you've danced right into the next question, which sounds like the same one, but just a little bit different. And that is, how does spiritual care everywhere promote, enhance, encourage, pick your own verb, conscious evolution? Because I think that's what you just described, conscious evolution.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I would say that, Reverend Sharri, is that the awareness, to me, the end state of spiritual care everywhere would be a little code. Not only every place a person gets health care that says, yeah, we're good for spiritual care everywhere. We'll put a code here, and somebody can click on it and then go to the Spiritual Care Everywhere website and either be signed up already or make a couple quick choices about what form and flavor of prayer they would like and connect. That as that happens, that ultimately that would become something available in schools and workplaces and around the community, to where we can perhaps see a softening of attitudes, to where people take an outlook of, if somebody would like spiritual care anytime, any place, to be more peaceful, we ought to let it happen. And then if we go that way, I think the twin reaction to that is, if I'm feeling out of sorts or sideways with some evolution around me, I can lean into some spiritual care and have that be part of what we all know and hold as table stakes for our human community. And I believe that just that degree to which we might step into that could be part of a new dawn.
Oh, you did it again, because here's the next question, and you're just sliding right into it. And that is, if everything goes exactly the way you would like it to go, every teeny tiny detail in every big event, 10 years from now, what will spiritual care everywhere look like?
Well, it'd look like the friendliest, most pervasive, non-entity, if you will, that would be out there, because people would all be benefiting from it. Those who feel, I would like some spiritual care sometime, they would just be getting it. And the face or the voice on that spiritual care would be generated out of some spiritual community or house of worship that's agreeable and friendly and convenient to their life and their choice. And spiritual care everywhere would be almost invisible, but would be the key thing that allows people to just, in any moment of feeling that need, to grab prayer support, grab some care. And I do believe that that's something that can be facilitated, where can be the slightest, almost invisible thing. And to me, that would be the best. Something comes up, it's like, I get a diagnosis as the doctor. If I can just click on my phone on the way out and be connected with beautiful, relevant, supportive spiritual care, for me, prayer support.
Okay, here's the last question I ask everybody, and it's really the most important one to me, especially this time. Will you come back?
I'd be delighted to come back. I would expect that as we come back, as much as we'll have more and more to talk about, we'll have less and less to talk about. I will tell you that when the Collaborative for Universal Health, the foundation nonprofit that's running this program, did its first activity, we helped the federal government, get alerts out to underserved health facilities in a couple states in the Midwest, and other people would have, trucks and banners and training programs and books of what to do. And the way we got it done, nobody had to be retrained. There was no need for any fancy new nothing. It's just in the course of people doing their work, some extra important information would be there at the right moment every time. And so for spiritual care everywhere, a little harder, but our goal is to have a way that spiritual care can be anywhere anyone could possibly want it, with really no training effort or anything. Just it's there through the hearts of people who believe in prayer.
Well, I believe in prayer, and I am tickled pink to tell you that the first opening that we have is the 23rd of January, which just happens to be my birthday. So can I put you in there for the 23rd of January, 2024?
Signed, sealed, and confirmed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us for this marvelous visit. Our visitor next week, our interview next week, is from Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni, who is one of the funniest people you'll ever meet, but he's also really high spirituality. He's the administrator of the affiliated New Thought Network, and he's a senior minister in New Thought Philadelphia. So he's got all kinds of stuff to talk about. And I know there will be things we haven't heard before. So come again next week and have a wonderful week. Until then, bye-bye.
Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.